The coffee mug hit the linoleum floor with a sharp crack, brown liquid spreading across the scuffed tiles as the leather-clad man leaned back in his chair, smirking. "What are you going to do about it, Grandma? Call your manager." His buddies erupted in laughter, not noticing how the middle-aged waitress straightened her shoulders or the way her calloused fingers flexed once before going perfectly still. They had no idea what they'd just awakened. Want to know what happened when they pushed too far? Stay with me for this story and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. The Desert Rose Diner sat like a weathered beacon along Highway 62, just outside 29 Palms, California. Its neon sign flickered intermittently in the pre-dawn darkness, casting pink shadows across the cracked parking lot where motorcycles and 18-wheelers shared space with the occasional government sedan. The air carried the distinctive scent of the Mojave creosote bush, hot asphalt, and diesel exhaust mixing with the aroma of bacon grease and fresh coffee that drifted from the diner's kitchen exhaust fans. Marie Santos moved between the tables with practiced efficiency, her steel-toed work boots silent on the worn floor. At 47, she carried herself with an economy of movement that spoke of someone who'd learned to conserve energy for when it mattered most. Her graying black hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, practical and neat, while her Uniforma standard-issue polyester dress the color of weak coffee hung loose on her compact frame. Deep lines mapped the corners of her dark eyes, etched by years of desert sun and experiences she rarely spoke about. Her hands, rough and scarred from more than waitressing, moved with precision as she refilled coffee cups and cleared plates. The regulars knew her as Quiet Marie, the lady who worked the night shift, who never complained about difficult customers, and who somehow always remembered exactly how everyone liked their eggs. What they didn't know was why she chose to work the midnight to dawn shift at a truck stop diner, or why she sometimes stood perfectly still for long moments, her eyes tracking the horizon through the grease-stained windows, as if she were watching for something that never came. The morning heat was already building outside, promising another scorching day in the high desert, when the rumble of motorcycle engines cut through the usual highway noise. Marie glanced up from wiping down the counter as 5 Harleys pulled into the parking lot, their riders dismounting with the exaggerated swagger of men who believed their leather vests and patches made them intimidating. The early morning crowd, mostly long-haul truckers and base personnel, grabbing breakfast before their shifts, barely looked up from their plates. The bikers took the large corner booth, spreading out like they owned the place. Their leader, a man in his 30s with arms covered in crude tattoos and a scraggly beard, immediately began making demands. "Hey, waitress, we need coffee, and make it snappy. We've got places to be." Marie approached their table with the same calm professionalism she showed every customer, coffee pot in hand. "Good morning, gentlemen. Coffee all around?" "About time," said the bearded man, whose vest proclaimed him Razor. His companions, younger men, trying too hard to look dangerous, snickered as Marie poured their coffee. "You move pretty slow for someone working in the service industry. Maybe you're too old for this job." She said nothing, simply continued pouring coffee with steady hands. But Razor wasn't done. He deliberately knocked over his sugar dispenser, sending white granules cascading across the table and onto the floor. "Oops. Better clean that up, Grandma. And bring us the biggest breakfast you got, we're starving." Marie gathered the sugar mess without comment, her movements efficient and unhurried. As she bent to sweep the spilled sugar from the floor, Razor's boot deliberately kicked over his coffee cup, sending the hot liquid splashing across her legs and the floor. His friends burst into laughter. "Real smooth, Razor," called out one of them, a thin man with neck tattoos who called himself Snake. "I bet she's never seen service this exciting." "Look at her," added a third biker, younger than the others and clearly trying to impress. "Bet she's been slinging hash since the Vietnam War. Probably got stories about the good old days when people respected bikers." The diner had gone quiet. Even the truckers had stopped eating to watch, some looking uncomfortable, others simply curious about how this would play out. Marie stood slowly, the empty coffee pot still in her hand, and looked directly at Razor for the first time. Her voice was steady, without emotion. "I'll get you fresh coffee, and take your order whenever you're ready." But Razor was on a roll now, emboldened by his audience and his friends' laughter. He leaned back in his seat, studying Marie with mock concern. "You know what? I don't think you're cut out for this kind of work. Maybe you should find something more suited to your limitations. Knitting circle, maybe? Book club?" Snake chimed in. "Yeah, leave the real work to people who can handle it. This is a tough crowd here, truckers, military guys. Not exactly your suburban coffee shop." The young one, not to be outdone, pointed at Marie's worn uniform. "Look at that outfit. Probably been wearing the same dress since Reagan was president. Time to retire, lady." Through it all, Marie remained perfectly still, her dark eyes taking in each of their faces with the kind of attention most people reserved for reading a map in unfamiliar territory. She didn't argue, didn't defend herself, didn't call for help. She simply existed in that space, absorbing their mockery with a composure that began to feel unsettling to anyone paying close attention. The shift happened when Marie turned to clean up the spilled coffee. As she bent down, the loose sleeve of her uniform rode up her left forearm, revealing the edge of something dark beneath. It was Razor who noticed at first a glimpse of black ink against weathered skin. His mocking expression faltered slightly as he tried to make out what he was seeing. "Hold up," he said, his voice losing some of its swagger. "What's that on your arm?" Marie straightened slowly, unconsciously pulling her sleeve down. But Snake had seen it too, and his street-smart eyes were sharper than his leader's. "Nah, let's see it. You got ink under there, Granny?" For the first time since they'd walked in, Marie hesitated. Something shifted in her posture, a subtle straightening that made her seem taller, more solid. The playful cruelty in Razor's voice gave way to genuine curiosity mixed with something that might have been nervousness. "Come on," Snake pressed. "Show us what you're hiding. Bet it's some cute little butterfly or something." The laughter from their table had stopped. The other customers sensed the change in atmosphere. The way the air itself seemed to grow heavier. Marie looked at the 5 men for a long moment, then slowly, deliberately, pushed up her left sleeve. The tattoo that emerged was nothing like what they'd expected. Stark black ink formed the distinctive eagle, globe, and anchor of the United States Marine Corps. But this wasn't some generic flash art from a strip mall tattoo parlor. Below the emblem, in precise military lettering, were the words "Force Recon," and beneath that, numbers that made Snake's face go pale. Twund Force Reconnaissance Company. But it was the additional marking that made the diner go completely Salenta small, precise, 321, that indicated Marine Corps Military Occupational Specialty, Reconnaissance Man. Marie rolled up her right sleeve next, revealing more ink that told a story these wannabe tough guys were beginning to understand they'd misread completely. A combat action ribbon, tattooed in perfect detail, flanked by dates. OIF 2003, 2004, OIF 2009, 2010, Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom, multiple deployments. An older trucker at the counter, a man with Army Rangers on his baseball cap, stood up slowly. His weathered face had gone respectfully serious as he recognized what he was seeing. "Ma'am," he said quietly, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent diner. "Force Recon?" Marie nodded once, a slight acknowledgement that seemed to carry the weight of years. The trucker removed his cap. "Twund Force. That's some serious business right there." The atmosphere in the diner shifted like a sudden weather change. Razor and his crew found themselves looking at a woman they'd completely misjudged. Not some helpless waitress, but a Marine who'd served in the most elite reconnaissance units, who'd deployed multiple times to the most dangerous theaters of the global war on terror. Force Reconnaissance Marines were among the most highly trained warriors in the military, specialists in deep reconnaissance, direct action, and counter-terrorism operations. The silence stretched until the bell above the diner's entrance chimed, and a man in his 50s walked in wearing civilian clothes, but carrying himself with unmistakable military bearing. Master Sergeant Joe Hernandez, USMC, Rhetorate, had been coming to the Desert Rose for 3 years, always ordering the same thing, black coffee and wheat toast. He was also the senior enlisted advisor at the Marine Corps Communication Electronics School just down the road. Hernandez took one look at the scenery with her sleeves rolled up, the bikers suddenly looking uncomfortable. The respectful silence of the other customers and immediately understood what was happening. His eyes found Marie's tattoos, and his expression grew very serious. "Good morning, Marie," he said formally, his voice carrying the authority of 30 years in the Corps. Then, seeing the Force Recon insignia, he added something that made every veteran in the diner straighten up. "Semper Fi, Marine." Marie's response was quiet but clear. "Semper Fi, Master Sergeant." Hernandez approached the counter where Marie stood, his movements deliberate and respectful. "Twund Force Reconnaissance," he said, not quite a question. "I knew some good Marines in that unit, deployed twice by the look of it." "3 times, Master Sergeant. The dates only show the major deployments." Hernandez nodded slowly. 3 deployments with Force Recon. That means... He paused, understanding the implications. "That means you've seen more combat than most Marines will see in their entire careers. Deep reconnaissance behind enemy lines, direct action missions. The kind of operations that don't make it into the history books." The bikers were listening now with growing comprehension and discomfort. Razor shifted in his seat, his earlier bravado completely evaporated. Snake was staring at Marie's tattoos with something approaching awe, beginning to understand that they'd just been mocking someone who'd spent years in some of the most dangerous situations the modern military had to offer. "Master Sergeant," Marie said quietly, "these gentlemen were just having some fun. No harm done." But Hernandez was looking at the spilled coffee on the floor, the overturned sugar dispenser, and the expressions of the 5 bikers who were trying very hard to become invisible. His voice, when he spoke, carried the unmistakable tone of a senior NCO who just identified a problem that needed correcting. "Is that so?" He turned to face Razor directly. "Son, do you understand what Force Reconnaissance Marines do?" Razor mumbled something inaudible. "I asked you a question, and I expect an answer." "No, sir. I don't know." Hernandez nodded grimly. "Force Recon Marines are among the most elite warriors our nation produces. They operate behind enemy lines, often alone or in very small teams, conducting reconnaissance and direct action missions in the most hostile environments on Earth. They undergo some of the most rigorous training in the military amphibious reconnaissance, parachute operations, combat diving, advanced marksmanship, close-quarters battle, survival training that would break most people." He gestured toward Marie, who remained standing quietly, her tattooed arms still visible. "This Marine has spent years in places where the enemy would have tortured and killed her if she'd been captured. She's probably called in airstrikes, conducted raids, gathered intelligence that saved American lives. And you thought it was amusing to spill coffee on her because she looked like an easy target." The silence in the diner was profound. Even the coffee maker seemed to have stopped gurgling. Snake found his voice first. We didn't know." "Of course you didn't know," Hernandez replied, "because real warriors don't advertise. They don't wear their service on their sleeves for everyone to see. They go about their lives quietly, doing whatever work needs doing, carrying their experiences and their sacrifices without looking for recognition or sympathy." Marie moved then, beginning to clean up the mess around the biker's table with the same calm efficiency she'd shown throughout the entire encounter. But now everyone was watching her differently, seeing the economy of movement, The way she scanned the room, the controlled precision that spoke of someone who'd been trained to notice everything and waste nothing. As she worked, Hernandez continued his impromptu education of the 5 bikers. You see how she moves? That's someone who's been in situations where a moment's inattention could mean death. You see how calm she stayed when you were being disrespectful? That's someone who's faced real danger, real enemies. Your little performance here doesn't even register on her scale of things to worry about. Marie straightened up, the area around their table now spotless. Can I get you gentlemen fresh coffee? She asked, her voice unchanged from when she'd first approached their table. Razor looked like he wanted to disappear into his leather vest. Ma'am, I'm sorry, we didn't mean. Fresh coffee? Marie repeated gently. Yes, ma'am, Snake said quickly. Please, and we'd like to pay for everyone's breakfast this morning. Everyone in the diner. Marie nodded once and moved away to get the coffee pot. Hernandez watched her go, then turned back to the bikers. You want to know something else about Force Recon Marines? They're taught to help their fellow warriors, regardless of branch or status. Even after everything you've done this morning, she'll still serve you with the same professionalism she shows everyone else. That's what honor looks like. As if to prove his point, Marie returned with fresh coffee and began refilling their cups. Her movements were steady, professional, without a trace of resentment or superiority. She was simply doing her job, the same way she'd probably approached every mission during her military service, with competence, dedication, and quiet strength. The youngest biker, who couldn't have been more than 25, finally worked up the courage to speak. Ma'am, thank you for your service. Really, my brother's in the Army, and he's talked about Marines like you. I should have known better. Marie paused in her coffee pouring and looked at him directly for the first time. What's your brother's unit? 80. Twund Airborne, 3rd Brigade. She nodded approvingly. Good unit. Tell him a Marine said to keep his head down and trust his training. The young man's eyes filled with unexpected tears. I will, ma'am. I definitely will. Hernandez observed this exchange with satisfaction, then addressed the group as a whole. Gentlemen, you've learned something important today. The most dangerous people are often the ones who look the least dangerous. The real warriors, the ones who've actually seen combat, don't need to prove anything to anyone. They know what they're capable of, and that's enough. Over the next hour, something remarkable happened in the Desert Rose Diner. Word of the morning's events spread among the customers, and the mood shifted from tension to something approaching reverence. The truckers, many of them veterans themselves, began sharing their own stories of underestimated service members they'd known. The bikers, chastened and genuinely remorseful, stayed for breakfast and listened respectfully to tales of quiet heroism and hidden service. Marie continued working her shift, but now the customers treated her differently. Not with pity or excessive deference, but with the respect due to someone who'd served with distinction in harm's way. She accepted their thanks graciously but briefly, more comfortable returning to her role as the competent, reliable waitress they'd always known. When Razor's group finally prepared to leave, they approached Marie at the counter. Razor, his earlier swagger completely gone, struggled to find words. Ma'am, I want to apologize again. What we did was wrong, and we know it. Is there anything we can do? Marie considered this seriously. You can remember that everyone you meet is carrying something you don't know about. Some people carry pain, some carry responsibility, some carry memories of things they'd rather forget. A little kindness doesn't cost anything, but it can mean everything to the person receiving it. Snake nodded earnestly. We'll remember that, ma'am, and we'll spread the word this place is off limits for anyone thinking about causing trouble. That's not necessary, Marie replied. Just treat people with respect. That's all any of us can ask for. The bikers left quietly, their departure marking the end of one of the most educational mornings in the Desert Rose Diner's history. Hernandez lingered over his coffee, watching Marie work and thinking about the Marines he'd known over the years who'd transitioned to civilian life, carrying their experiences and their training into new roles, new challenges. As the morning rush wound down and the diner returned to its normal rhythm, Marie finally allowed herself a small smile. She'd handled the situation exactly as her training had taught her: assess the threat, maintain composure, use minimum necessary force, and always be ready to escalate if required. The fact that no escalation had been necessary was a victory in itself. The Desert Rose Diner continued serving travelers along Highway 62, but something had changed that morning. The story of the quiet waitress with the Force Recon tattoo spread among the truckers and base personnel, becoming part of the local legend. Marie went back to her night shifts, her practical uniform, her efficient service. But now, everyone who met her understood that they were in the presence of someone who'd served with extraordinary distinction in extraordinary circumstances. The lesson of that morning resonated far beyond the walls of the diner. In a world quick to judge by appearances, where loud voices often drown out quiet competence, 5 bikers learned to look deeper, to respect the hidden stories carried by those around them. They learned that real strength doesn't need to announce itself, that true warriors earn their respect through deeds, not words, and that sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one who looks the least threatening. This story reminds us that heroes walk among us every day, often in uniforms we don't recognize, carrying experiences we can't imagine. They serve our coffee, drive our trucks, teach our children, and ask for nothing more than the respect due to any hard-working person trying to make an honest living. The next time you encounter someone who seems ordinary, remember Marie Santos and the lesson of the Desert Rose Diner. Everyone has a story, and some of those stories are written in ink that tells of courage, sacrifice, and service beyond what most of us will ever be called upon to give. Have you ever witnessed someone being completely underestimated, only to discover they had an incredible hidden background? Share your thoughts in the comments below about respecting quiet strength and recognizing the hidden heroes around us. And if this story moved you, hit that subscribe button. We need to keep telling these stories about the veterans who continue to serve in different ways, carrying their honor and their experiences into every new challenge they face.